Hi, everyone, and welcome to another evening of Collage Live Online. This event is public space, street art, and collage. And we're joined by the creative brain trust of the Collage Street Crew. We have FANCLUB13, and if you're not familiar with their work, they make their collages using scraps of trash that they found on the street. They turn it into art and then put it back out onto the street. And then we also have Rosie Schinners. She first brought guerrilla art to Collage Fest 2018 with the Dystopian Reader, and she designed the World Collage Day 2019 poster. And so tonight they're going to talk about their own work as street artists, the work of other street artists in the field, and the history of street art with an emphasis on collage. And at the end of this, we'll have a Q&A portion, so feel free to leave questions in the chat, and we'll come back around to them at the end of this. So without further ado, we're going to start with Rosie Schinners.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? I'm just going to switch over to screen share here. All right. I'm going to blank myself out so you don't watch me reading my notes. All right, I'm going to start off with introducing a little bit about myself. For those who don't know me, once again, my name is Rosie Schinners, and I'm an artist based on Salt Spring Island, British Columbia in Canada. Although much of my work is collage and ink on paper or panel, in the past few years, I have taken a greater interest in street art and public art interventions. So that is definitely now an important part of my practice. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what that looks like a bit later on in this session. First off, I'm going to actually start with a brief historical overview of street art just to give us some context to what we're talking about today. And like Christopher said, feel free to hold on your questions. Please comment. We want to start a discussion around this as well with all of your voices. I'm going to start with a quote from curator and art critic Johann Stahl. He says, "We have long since got accustomed to understanding art history as a succession of epochs. But at the same time, there has always existed something outside of official art history, an unruly and recalcitrant art, which takes place not in the sheltered environs of churches, collections, or galleries, but out on the street." So as long as humans have been around, we have been scribbling on whatever surface we could find as a way really to mark our existence, to say, I was here, and to claim space. The advent of contemporary street art, as we know it today, really began in the late 1960s, with graffiti and tagging becoming visible in the Black and Latino neighborhoods of New York City and Philadelphia, and subway cars acting as moving canvases. During the late 1970s to early 1980s, many graffiti artists began to shift away from text-based work to include imagery, and begun to experiment with different techniques such as stenciling and wheat pasting. Some notable examples of this include Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, and John Fechner, all working in New York City. So wheat pasting, which can be considered collage's street art relative with its paper and glue foundations, has been consistently utilized by activist and subculture communities. One example being poster bombing by the Black Panther Party of work by Emory Douglas in the early 1970s to advance social and political goals. Artists that really put wheat pasting on people's radar as a serious art medium in the 1990s include Shepard Fairey, who's seen here, and swoon with impressive larger scale work. Public art, which is deemed to be unsanctioned, can also be considered as an art intervention and is always rebellious in nature. Often, location is crucial to the piece's context. One notorious prankster who has brought fame to street art through various techniques is Banksy. His series seen here is from 2005, which is called Unwelcome Intervention. And he left 9 pieces placed on the wall, separating the Israeli West Bank from Palestine. In addition to political and social messaging, artists use public art intervention strategies to bring beauty to urban landscapes. One of my favorite examples of this is actually a floral designer whose name is Lewis Miller, who brings self-coined flower flashes to the streets of New York. Collage is often smaller scale in nature, can provide an opportunity for more intimate art interventions with onlookers in urban environments. One artist who utilizes the streets as a canvas for collage is Brazilian Zé Vicente. Very clever in creating unexpected moments on the streets. So that is a very quick, very brief overview when it comes to street art. Just wanted to give you a little short history lesson, but if you're interested in learning more about global street art, I've pulled together a few online resources that you can check out for more information. I'll just leave this up for a couple minutes if you wanted to take a picture of that or screenshot it. You can also reach out to me and I can send along these links as well. But there's tons of great articles and stories about initiatives happening around the world, and a lot of them definitely focus on collage projects as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Lance, and he's going to share a bit about some contemporary artists and collectives who are utilizing collage specifically in their street art practice today. So over to you, Lance. We'll stop sharing here.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So hi, I'm Lance. I also go by the name FANCLUB13. It's my nom d'artiste. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Let's click that and that. And you should be able to see that okay. This is just my website here. I started doing street art started doing street art in 2008. But you can see here, I work almost exclusively with just trash that I find in the street. And then making little collages out of it and putting it back out on the street. But I really want to talk first of all about some of the other artists that are doing collage in street art. There's a lot of different ways of thinking about it. You know, collaging is just using paper for the most part and putting different things together. It doesn't necessarily have to be paper, but you can collage with many things. And so some people who are doing wheat pastes and using all other kinds of materials to put out on the street, you can certainly collage lots of different things. You know, we talked about the history of that, and you know, certainly people like Rauschenberg were making like 3D collages out of different kinds of things that he called constructs. So you can see here, I'm gonna use Instagram mostly to show you some of these people that are working. So here's my little page. I'm gonna move on to a couple of people that I really love their work, especially because they've invited everyone else to kind of join them. And so it's this French street art couple called Leo and Pipo, and you can see their site there. They are fairly quiet when it comes to social media. They don't necessarily talk a lot, but they actually interact with other artists individually. So I know Rosie made a piece in collaboration with them. And you can see here through their Instagram, all this isn't necessarily just their work. They invite others to do these little portraits of, you know, the fictional Leo and Pipo in different ways. And so you can see all these portraits that are actually of many different people. And it's just amazing, the creativity and different ways that people can go about doing the same kind of thing. Some of them are more individual pieces, and others you can see are clearly put out in public. So I'm going to try to move pretty quickly through these and give you just an idea of what some people are out there doing. I'm going to move on to another pair that I discovered at an exhibition in Belgium when I was living there. And this is Sten and Lex. It's actually a duo. I believe they're Italian. They've started doing a lot more printing, but you can see here they're definitely using a 3D effect. You can see this this paper is actually peeling off the wall, so they put it up in these amazing, huge pieces of almost, you know, almost a digitized version of what they figure out, and then put it in these massive, massive pieces. I got to see one of theirs in person when I was living there in Belgium, and here you can see this piece in this parking lot, which is actually a car park for a grocery store. And, you know, what makes it much more interesting is that they've intentionally started to kind of destroy the work right after they put it up. So obviously the elements kind of continue on with that. So then another person I want to talk about is a friend of mine who lives in Lille, France. His name is Mimi the Clown. And he mostly does paste ups and wheat pastes. As you can see here, he's got a very kind of funny attitude. He uses the clown nose as his symbol. But he is really very much a collage artist, as you can see here, using many different pieces on top of each other and different backgrounds. And he does stuff all over Europe. He also does lots of printing and woodcuts. But you can see here, he's definitely using multiple pieces on top of each other in his collage street art. I have a cute little photo here I'm trying to switch over to. Let's see. Here we go. Here's a photo I took in Belgium of one of his pieces, and you can see there's multiple layers here that he's done with his wheat paste. So that's Mimi Le Clown on Instagram. I'm going to move on now to this person. Not sure how to pronounce this, Marley or Marlas, out of Australia. Really great stuff. Apparently injured recently, but hopefully back to work soon. You can see these pieces. They've put a frame up and are putting different pieces there, you know, on different days or different weeks. And clearly very elaborate collages with many different pieces. I'm going to leave these up for just a second so you can copy them down if you need to. All right, so now I'm going to move on here to, this is street collages out of Helsinki. And this person actually hasn't posted in a really long time. I connected with them, you know, quite a while ago, and you can see their last post here actually was 240 weeks ago. So I haven't actually been in contact with them recently, but I definitely want to show them because it is really wonderful work, especially for, you know, being, you know, a decade ago when they started. Really cute little collages just put up out on the street for people to come in contact with. All right, so move on here to, here's something that Rosie mentioned, Swoon, who is Caledonia Curry. Just an amazing artist all around. She's branched out into so many different things here, but you can see just how elaborate her pieces are with multiple layers and prints and also some just different pieces. You can see here how she does different cutouts, and she'll use stencils all combined. So it's really a mixed media. She's probably one of the most famous street artists working today. And just beautiful, beautiful, elaborate work. And I'm going to move on here to Dee Dee Was Here. And you can see here using the same kind of symbols over and over again, sometimes in similar ways. But definitely using some beautiful wheat paste and then signing it. I love that they have, all this text to go with it, describing how they did it and how they felt about it, and some of the reactions, some of the prints. Wonderful usage of different mediums here. And then here's Misprinted. I love that name. Has a really good following here, and just some amazing work out in public. And then the photographing of the work and the video is really, kind of makes all the difference here. And kind of similar to those things that Rosie was talking about earlier, really the interaction of where you're standing when you look at it really kind of plays into the piece and how it looks. And then also that person has started this collage garden, which I believe is a collaboration where they put up work by different artists. So here's the most recent one they did in Seville. Is that correct? Yeah, Seville, last month. And so they started with just a little bit and then gradually put up more and more. Similar to our collab slab, until it became quite large. So I love that idea. And then here I'm going to move on to this Fantasia collage, recommended to me by Rosie. Some really, really cool, innovative stuff that really works with the surroundings. Putting stuff on natural backgrounds is much different viewpoint. It gives it a much more interesting feel sometimes. And then here's another person that I really like, the pop surrealist. Here's one that they put up in Montmartre, and I love the way they do these videos to show. I do a similar thing with mine where you can kind of see what it looks like. This person uses mostly money here, and you can see it says, make art with money, not money with art. So that's pretty much all I have there. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. So now I can actually see the chat again. Any questions before we move on back to Rosie and talk more about her work? No? All right. So let's switch on back to Rosie and see more about what she does.
Hi again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own street art practice and what that looks like. So I'm going to do a little screen share again. So Christopher had mentioned at the beginning of the session that I had brought the Dystopian Reader to Collage Fest. So a little bit about this project, which was really my first foray into public art interventions. This was in 2017, I began the project. So the Dystopian Reader places collage bookmarks, which I make in public bookshops and libraries all over the world during my travels, specifically in works of dystopian literature, almost like a little token of joy as you're reading a maybe not so uplifting book. So I just thought I'd offer some free art to counterbalance that experience. So, hence the tag, located wherever you may find upsetting books. So to date, I have dispersed over 100 works worldwide during my travels, and have tracked every placement through an Instagram feed, which you can find at the Dystopian Reader. A couple more examples. So all of the bookmarks are tagged as to where they are, so anyone can go and find them. The project currently has been on a bit of a hiatus due to the pandemic. It's a little challenging to wrap my brain around navigating the current climate we're in and putting things in public shops that may or may not be open. So I'm just trying to figure out a new strategy, or pause it until things feel a bit better again, and hopefully in collaboration with other artists as well. So that might look like me doing a starter bookmark and sending it to another artist, and they finish it and they place it within their community. That way we can have some really awesome collaborations and get more of them out into the world as well. So with the Dystopian Reader, after I was doing that for a while, I was really into the idea of public art and street art. And more recently, I have taken a turn into wheat pasting as well. So one way I was looking at it was that it was a way to play with the scale of my current collage work, to be able to see it on a much larger scale than how I currently work, which is typically quite small. So I'm interested also in the different impacts of more visible, larger scale work, but also smaller, harder to detect moments. So hidden encounters where people might notice something on their daily walk. So for instance, this is me pasting up just a small piece underneath a boardwalk that's by my house that people often walk by all the time. So I'm interested not only in larger scale work, but also smaller, more intimate moments as well. So as I've been living in a rural environment over the past couple of years, I've been exploring different natural surfaces for wheat pasting as well, which Lance mentioned when he was talking about some artists, that sometimes you can find unconventional surfaces to work with as well. So this was, for instance, just on a log in the middle of the forest that someone might come across. So, we talk a lot about urban art and street art, but for me, living in a rural environment, I've had to think about how I can translate what you would normally do on the street in a forest. So with that, I've actually really enjoyed revisiting and seeing the progression of time. So watching the environment embrace and work around whatever has been left, and how the surface changes over time. So this is the exact same piece within 3 months. And I think going forward, I'm absolutely taken with this. And I think the fact that the piece still remains as the tree is peeling itself, I'm going to do a lot more before and after shots with pieces in nature. So when we talk about strategies in getting into public art, and one way that if you maybe haven't done it before, might be collaborating with a local business who may be willing to offer a wall or surface for a temporary piece. So with this kind of strategy, it offers a sanctioned space and maybe a bit less intimidating than working on unsanctioned spaces for the first time. So I recently added some wheat paste work to a friend's shop window. They really enjoyed what I do, and they wanted to support local artists. So this might be a really great way if you know somebody who has a building that you could try something out if you haven't done it before. So that's just an overview of my practice. So I'm gonna ping pong it back over to Lance, and he's going to share a bit more about what he does as well.
That was wonderful. I love seeing some of your newer work. Very cool.
Thank you.
Especially the natural stuff.
Yeah.
So I started doing street art in 2018 using Polaroids. I'm a photographer by trade, and I really discovered it all on my own. I had never even heard of Banksy back then, and I started leaving Polaroids all over town in Tampa, where I lived at the time, in Tampa Bay and around Florida. And then when I moved to Europe, I was just found myself picking up all these really interesting things and saving them and not really knowing what to do. And that's when I kind of got back into collage. I had done a little bit of collage in high school, but really at college, and not much more after that. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Let's see, I'm gonna go to here. And I'll come back to this one. This is what we're gonna actually have a call to artists to have you guys all take part in our street art call afterward. We'll talk about it. All right, let's move on here. Let's see. Here we go. So this is my very first collage. This is what it looked like here. And I put it up in Paris. This is in 2010. And so I basically I used a lot of record covers. I felt really strangely about how so many record covers were just so cheesy and didn't really have anything to do with what the music was about. So I started kind of picking up trash. As you can see here in my little thing, I kind of always have a little pocket full of trash of different things I've picked up off the street or taken out of my junk mail, or ripped out from newspaper parts or things like that. You can also see here I actually was originally including some of my Polaroids in there. So I'm really just kind of go through some of the work that I've done. This is some of my earlier work here in Brussels. I was living in Belgium for 6 years. And so I often will take a cheesy old record cover and then cover it with different stuff that I found on the ground, and then put it back out in public. So that's mostly what I was doing for like the first 8 years. And I was working for a while under the name Ray Johnson Fan Club. Some of you may know the collage artist Ray Johnson. So here's a piece I left in Amsterdam. Here you can see I took that and made it into that, and then left it here in Rome near some beer bottles by the Colosseum. Here's a piece I left in Poland, in Krakow. And I was almost exclusively using record covers at the time. Mostly the cheesy ones, because you could find them really cheap and easy. Here's a piece I put up in Berlin. Here's the largest piece I've done. This was a huge piece. It's probably about 6 feet tall. And this was actually in an abandoned art school in Belgium. And I went through the school picking up different pieces. And so the background is actually someone's painting. And then I put all this other stuff that I found in the school around on it. You can see how big it is there with some of the other stuff I did with people walking by. Here's a piece I put up in Atlanta. You're still using record covers. I definitely do usually put up, you know, what they would say is illegally. I try to use, usually when I'm putting things up, I use like a double stick tape that's not super permanent. And so most of my things can just be taken off the wall without damaging the paint. I don't necessarily, you know, I'm not really super into damaging public property, but I do want it to be seen. And I do feel like, you know, putting it up, not necessarily with permission, is a little more challenging for sure. You know, definitely keeping an eye out for, you know, law enforcement. We had talked a little bit before we started this about how nowadays there's kind of a dichotomy about how people are really appreciating street art more. Some people are. And, you know, you see there's mural festivals everywhere, and you can drive through major cities and see beautiful, especially murals and street art, you know, all over the place. But then there's also, you know, very recently, there's been a little bit of a backlash against, you know, what we might consider the counterculture, and what that might represent. So when it comes to things like tagging and also stickers and things like that, which I'm really big into, there's another group of people who are quite against that, you know, considering it to be simply just graffiti and damage of public property. So you really have to be careful and wary as to where you're putting stuff and exactly what you're doing and who's seeing you doing. Always, of course, always be aware of, you know, CCTV cameras. I tend to put up stuff in places that have already had stuff up, in many cases, especially when it's outside, but that's not necessarily always the case. This is a piece I put up in Ireland, in Dublin. There's the original. Here's a piece I put up in Rotterdam. And I tend to you know, try to make funny sayings sometimes, or just kind of ironic or political different things here and I also tend to pick up trash on the street where I'm working. So I'll be visiting a city and constantly picking up things off the street, filling my pockets. And then that night I'll make one whole collage that'll take like maybe 5 or 6 hours and then put it up the very next day. So very often I'm working in the language of the city that I'm in. Here in Dutch, it says, "Art is deadly." Sometimes I know the language a little bit, and other times I'm just using Google Translate. Here's a piece album I used to put up a piece in London. So normally I'm a bit of an anthropologist, where I'm actually picking up things off the street where I am and then putting them back out on the street right there in that same city. You can see here how I very often will work with like gum wrappers or cigarette wrappers that have like a shiny quality to them. And I kind of feel like that lends almost a saintly kind of spirit to the, you know, what used to be a cheesy model used for commercial purposes. So here's a piece I put up also in Amsterdam or Rotterdam, I can't remember, in Dutch. So there's, you can see the difference going back and forth to what I did to it. And I do have, if it's here, I'm going to switch now to a different share to show you a small video of me actually working on it. Let's see if I can do that. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through this. I'm not going to show the whole thing. Going back and forth from the original to the finished product. And then back before iPhones were really good for video, I actually just kind of shot this little quick video of me picking up trash on the street. Of course, it's going to delay now. Let's see. There we go. And so I'll pick up, you know, especially newspapers and magazines, because that gives you lots and lots to work with. But also I'll just pick up postcards and gum wrappers, and sometimes I'll go and to those free postcard racks and just take a bunch of stuff. Here's a really good newspaper or magazine. You know, those will give you lots of material to work with. I'm going to forward through this so you can see here, taking free postcards out of the magazine rack. And then here I'll just sit in the hotel. My wife loves this, of course, not really, until, you know, 4 or 5, sometimes until dawn, working very slowly with just a glue stick and a pen knife. I prefer a pen knife to scissors. Working on the collage and putting it all together. Getting it ready and then cleaning up, of course. And then the next day you can see here me just kind of putting it up with tape on a temporary construction site. I like those a lot because they're not permanent and the site's going to come down anyway. And then I always like to take a video or pictures of people just ignoring my work as they go by. So this is how I document it. As you've seen, I just kind of take a little picture of people ignoring it. I'm going to stop my share now and go back to my other screen here. There we go. So then I started working on actual records and CDs. As you can see here, if you look at my little screen, here's a little record that I did on a red record. And so here, this is actually a DVD. And I love that it's just kind of an instantly recognizable shape that someone, you know, will see initially. And here you can see close up that a lot of my work is really kind of intricate and looks better super close up. And I love taking pictures of people kind of walking by or ignoring it. Here's a piece I put on a post box in Paris, right outside the Moulin Rouge. And then, you know, a grandmother and grandchild putting their mail in the mailbox right next to it. This is in Paris. This is a 45 record. Also Paris. Brussels. So I really like working with those little pieces, and it takes a little bit less time. And sometimes I will actually make some pieces in advance before I visit a country or a city to put them up. Here's one I did in Bristol, England. And I tend to have newspapers and magazines from that time period. So a lot of times, you know, it'll not only be archaeological, but it'll be topical as well, things that are going on at the time. I'm just going to flip through these. I've also started doing individual book pages that are all very similar, but then have different imagery. I really love the distill art movement, Mondrian and Van Doesburg, so I tend toward those kinds of shapes. And you can see here, I left this one in Key West on a newspaper box. Here's a collaboration I did with CF Coat, I believe is his name. RF Coat, rather, and then left that at the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery here in Florida, which is not far away. There's a piece I did recently in Miami. And then a few years ago, I changed my name from Ray Johnson Fan Club to FANCLUB13. You can look into that if you want. Here's a piece I did in, when I went over to Europe again. And then this is my first Collage Fest. So this is actually put up in New Orleans. And so you can see some of the things here. You know, here's a Willie's Chicken Shack wrapper. You guys from New Orleans will probably know that. So this actually is a wrapper from a French fry place there. And then here's like a steamboat ticket. And this is from like a haunted tour that you can take, like a ghost tour. And you can see here, I usually do, I have little titles for them. So this one says, "The Seventh Golden Steamboat woos senators as haunted family has much to consider." You can see here's my baggage claim check from coming into the airport. So that was my first Collage Fest, which was such a great experience. Here's back in France, just kind of randomly going through stuff here. And then this is last year in New Orleans, right before the flood, on a DVD. And this is the main graphic for the session here that I made sitting at the collage table with everyone else, and then put it up there on the dumpster, the skip, just before I evacuated before the hurricane. There's that piece I put up in Europe somewhere. All right, so I'm going to switch back here to my wonderful face here. Let's see. There we go. All right. So I guess, we'll address some of the, we can see you now, Rosie, yeah?
Yep, hi.
Yeah,
we do have some questions that have come in, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one from Clive.
Yeah, actually, I've been keeping the questions. I'll just taking notes.
Oh, you have? Okay, great.
Kind of like
great. We have someone keeping track.
Q&A portion.
I did notice one from Clive. So
so Clive Knights asks if you have any evidence of the response of the public. In other words, what have you learned about how your work contributes to their lives?
Yeah. I mean, I think being able to have a social media account where things are tracked, and you can stay relatively anonymous if you want, but that there's an outlet for people to respond back to you. So, with all of my bookmarks that are out there, there's contact information that redirects to the Instagram feed. So that gives an opportunity for people to communicate. Is there a lot? No, but the ones that, do take the time to write in or send a picture, it's so valuable. And even if one person, writes back, I think the whole point of it for me is knowing that there's always going to be someone out there that sees it, whether they're able to, get in touch with you or not. I've had people with my wheat paste art get really excited because they finally put 2 and 2 together, and they're like, oh, you're the artist that did that thing, down the way. And I mean, that's a little bit easier in a rural community than it is perhaps maybe in a city. But I think just even hearing 1 or 2 voices out of the hundreds of people that might see it, for me, that it's validating, and it makes me feel that at least one person is impacted by what I'm doing. So yeah. How about you, Lance?
Yeah. So I tend to be a little bit more anonymous with my FANCLUB13 work. All of it is stamped FANCLUB13, but with how elaborate my stuff is, sometimes that just kind of gets lost in the mishmash. So I will actually, view or even sometimes video people as they're interacting with it. My favorite interaction was, I was in Venice, and I had put up a little CD sticker. I had collected trash while I was there, made the little collage, and then put it up on a little electrical box that was right underneath, kind of like a Madonna on the side of a building. There's very often like religious statuary around there, and so I certainly wouldn't have put it on that, but I put it on a little electric box. They had kind of already defaced the place by putting this ugly electric box there, so I decided I could go ahead and put my sticker on that. And then I was taking video, and this old man with his cane walked up and looked at it really close and tried to figure out what it was, and then he ripped it off and walked over and threw it in the trash can right there. And I felt it was like, that's just the greatest. I mean, it was trash on the street. I made it into art that, he looked at, and he gave me his critique, which was just putting it right back in the trash. I loved that, and I left it there. On my other street art that I do with the Polaroids, I do under a little bit more obvious one. It's called Picture Crossing. And so on the back of each one, it says, you have found your original piece of art. Please go to picturecrossing.com. And I've left over 500 Polaroids all over the world. And I think maybe less than 15% of them I had people contact me with them, With my collage work, on the other hand, I'll put up a big piece like here, here's a record that's ready to go up out on the street that I did on an old Red album. And if I'll put that up, and I would, I document it as it's there, and then sometimes I'll go away and come back an hour or two later, and sometimes they're gone after an hour. And then other times I've seen them where they're still there, weeks later. I'm usually gone out of the country, within a week or so of when I visit a place. So I don't really get a lot of feedback on the work other than just seeing what people see. I love the idea, though, of, especially with some of those other ones we saw, of someone just having this, visceral, real, tangible experience with a piece of art that's not in a gallery or, somewhere, and to have them actually, look at it in public is interesting.
That actually segues nicely into a question that Laura just asked. Is it ever difficult to let your work go, not knowing what's going to happen to it next?
Well, quickly, I clearly, as soon as I put it up, I expect it to either be, rained on or put away. All my pieces are definitely originals. So, like, they're not copies or multiples. So yeah, I definitely document them before I put them up. And I feel like once I put it up, that's it. It's the world's now. I say on my website, you're free to enjoy or destroy.
Yeah, I think venturing into street art and public art intervention projects, I think it allowed me to become less precious with my work in realizing that I can make more, like it actually allowed me to be a bit more prolific, because I almost felt like I have to replace all this stuff that's going out, and and there's just an ephemeral nature to it. There's a transient nature to it that it's kind of satisfying once you let go of the preciousness of it. I think allows you to, I think, just be a lot less careful and a lot less, and it allows you to be more playful, I think, with the work that you're putting out there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And Llewellyn just asked, have you ever gone back in later years to look at work you've hung? Do you think anything, so like Rosie, you did with the collage on the tree. Lance, do you think that you have work that's still up?
Probably very, very few. Sometimes I put them in really strange locations that don't necessarily either get weathered or seen. I know, like, sometimes I put up stuff in museums as well. So I'll put things like, on the back of a museum door that almost always stays open. Or, like I said, like on a little electrical box, or one time in a bed and breakfast, I pulled the bed out and put a piece on the back of the bed frame and then pushed it back up against the wall. But again, I usually don't go back to those places to be able to see them. I think the longest I've ever gone back and seen something that was still up was just like less than a month, probably.
We had a lot of questions about the techniques that you did, so I'm gonna kind of dig into a few of those. Anne Sutherland asked, how long does the wheat paste last in the elements? Like, what's the life expectancy of a piece?
Rosie?
Yeah, the reality is that it is ephemeral. It's paper and glue, and when you have something outside, the elements will take to it and it will weather, but there is sometimes a beauty in the weathering process as well. At least I sort of have come to embrace that part of it. There are certain things that you can do to kind of lengthen the life of a wheat paste.
Someone else had asked about like varnish or anything like that.
Yeah, most recently I started working with like a UV varnish spray as a finish. I'm gonna have to go and revisit those pieces in a few months to see if there is a difference. But there are certain things you can do. Like once it's totally dry, you could, yeah, coat it with like a weatherproofing sealant. Yeah, it really depends on where it's located, how much sun it's getting. If, you know, there are a couple that I've put up that have a little lip that protects it from some moisture, but the reality is that it is going to age over time. But the beauty is, if you're able to, you can always go back and put another one up. So that's the thing with street art, is that there's a changing and transient nature to it that I think kind of just comes with the work. It's like you get to see how something ages over time, which can be beautiful in itself. Yeah.
A couple of people asked, this is for Lance, how do you stick the larger pieces up, like the records? Does the double-sided tape work on those, or do you use something else?
Yeah, I usually am using kind of the puffy double-sided tape that usually comes off pretty easily, but it'll stay there for, you know, as long as nobody messes with it, or, you know, there's not a hurricane, which we might have this weekend. But yeah, usually the double stick tape is what I use for the big records. For the larger pieces, if I'm doing, sometimes I do like posters, and then it gets a little more complicated. Sometimes I'll hang them with different things. But yeah, mostly it's just double stick tape.
And I know, Rosie, you were answering some questions in the chat, but a few people asked about like blowing up your pieces and how you put them together. Do you put them together on the spot, or do you prepare them beforehand? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, with larger scale wheat pasting work, that's, you know, the technique that I use, people will use a lot of different things. They'll try and blow up like one huge piece and have it rolled up and, you know, paste it up as quickly as they can. I like to keep a little bit of the detail of my pieces in the work. So I use a program that basically tiles it out over several pages, and then I can line it up piece by piece as I put it on the wall. So sometimes I'll connect a few of those pieces beforehand, but most of the time I just it's like a puzzle. You just kind of line it up on the wall and do it piece by piece. And I feel like I can get a lot of accuracy that way as well. One of the programs is called, I'll just type it in the chat here, Post Razor. And another tiling program that's online, which has an awesome name. It's called Rasterbator. That's another one that you can use as well. But yeah, there are definitely a handful of image blow up tiling programs you can use out there. I would recommend using laser printing. Inkjet will run. It just won't hold up the same way. Yeah, and just plain old printing paper, thinner the better, tends to be a good option. Yeah.
Cindy asked Lance, how do you prep the trash? I think maybe in terms of like cleanliness or something like that. Is there any sort of process you go through?
I until recently, of course, this year, I've been pretty fast and loose with, you know, touching things that aren't necessarily that clean. So yeah, I just kind of, you know, keep a special bag with me in my bag or in my pockets, and then I really am just looking through it to see what is going to work. I tend to work in a very two-dimensional way. I tend to find some things that are really cool, but they're just like 2-3-dimensional for me to consider. But so, yeah, a lot of times I'm basically just kind of wiping stuff off, and I really love the used kind of gritty nature of some of the trash. And so, you know, if there's some schmutz on there, you know, I kind of like that. I tend to, you know, as far as prepping it, I really will just like, if there's stuff on it, I'll wipe it off. That's pretty much it. And sometimes I'll have to flatten things. I do a lot of tearing. I very rarely, I don't do a lot of, you know, exact cutting. I'm usually more ripping stuff because I really like the way that looks. Let's see here. But yeah, like, so here's just like a Starbucks element in this piece. And it's got torn and got coffee stains on it, and I feel like that really adds to it.
At last year's Collage Fest, I think there was like a napkin or something with a print on it that you were like, oh, but it's not trash. And I was like, well, what if you just throw it on the ground and step on it? And
Yeah.
There were also a couple questions about, sort of the legality of what you're doing. Shandy asked, do you guys prefer working during the daytime in a hurry, or do you prefer working at night?
Yeah, you want to go? You go first.
Okay, I because of my very short time usually in the area that I'm working in, very often I'm with family and traveling, so I don't have a lot of alone time to just do my own thing. So, I'm spending most of the time collecting the trash and making the piece. And when I'm putting stuff up, I really want to be as quick as possible. So I tend to look around a lot and just kind of see an area that I'm kind of scoping out. And then a lot of times I'm usually in broad daylight is when I'm putting stuff up most of the time. I don't tend to put stuff up at night, mostly because I feel like, as a photographer probably, photographing my piece up with people around it usually is part of the artwork, is part of the piece. Like, cause I'm going to present it later maybe as just some photographs of it up. So that's not as easily done in the dark. But a lot of times I will just kind of, lean up against a wall and see what's going on, and then just like put my piece up and then lean back up against it to make sure the tape is on the wall correctly, and then step away and just pretend like, oh, look at this cool piece of street art that I'm taking a picture of. Quickly, I also do a lot of things like inside as well. So I tend to put up stuff in almost every museum that I've been to. I put little things up, usually not in with the artwork. I tend to put it like in the hallways or in the restrooms or in the stairwell or something like that. So I just kind of wait until no one's looking. And I always imagine, some museum guard like looking at me on their camera somewhere.
Yeah, for myself, I like a little mix of day and night. I think like some of the larger pieces that perhaps aren't on sanctioned surfaces, I do like doing it in the evening, just so there is a bit of anonymity. Someone say the word for me. Anonymity.
Right. No.
Yeah. All right. Language. Yeah. So I think the larger pieces I kind of like doing at night, but I've found actually with the smaller pieces, I recently have done some during the day. And if you just kind of go into it with some sense of I'm supposed to be here and I'm doing this, like I haven't been questioned about it. And I think people just sort of go about like, well, this is quite brazen, so they must be allowed to do this sort of attitude. And I think with the bookmarks, obviously I have to get them into books during bookstore hours or library hours. So there is a bit of a thrill to like trying to do it as slick and sneaky as possible without being seen. There is some satisfaction in that. So it's almost like performative as well. Like you kind of just learn how to be slick with what you're doing and be as prepared as possible going into it so you can get it done quickly.
And Shandy just commented that she's motivated to start. She's going to go post something on her street tomorrow. So that's a good segue for the challenge. You guys want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm not good at reading very naturally, but I do have something written up here that we can do. And so we're going to, put out a call to all of you guys, everyone here listening. Feel free to join in. We're going to use the tag Collage Street Crew. And I'll put up a graphic here in a second. After our discussion here, and talking about how we've and other artists have been using the medium of collage in public art, we now challenge all of you to find your own way of introducing some of your art into the street. So you don't necessarily have to go about it the way we did. Clearly we work in very different ways. You may find some new and exciting way that we haven't even thought of yet. We've got a little bit of feedback from Rick and the other people at Collage in hopes that we might actually publish some of this work. We're not exactly positive how yet, but if we're going to do it, we need to have the pictures of your work by the beginning of September, so preferably September 1st. So use the entire month of August to explore the many ways of incorporating collage into street art. We're going to use the hashtag Collage Street Crew in social media so everyone can see your spectacular ideas. And also be sure to share what effect this has had on you and your work and your process. If you'd like your work to be considered for the Collage Street Crew publication part, please make sure to capture high resolution, well-exposed photographs of your work on the streets. You can see I do pictures of the work and then pictures of it on the street, but we definitely need the pictures on the street. We'll be looking through all the images with that tag. I'm gonna post it back up here now. Share screen and go back to here. And back to...
And does Collage Street Crew have an email address in case people aren't on social media but still want to send you pictures?
Not yet, but I do have that covered. You can send them to me for now. We haven't actually, we don't have a Collage Street Crew Instagram.
But that is a great idea, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if we want to start. I already have 4 Instagrams, yeah. So if somebody wants to do that, we'll talk about it. But definitely use this tag. If you don't want to use Instagram or social media, you can email them directly to me. You can use it through my website, the FANCLUB13.com, or you can send an email to, instead of info@FANCLUB13.com, it's actually noinfo@FANCLUB13.com. And I will post that in the Facebook group. I'll actually write it down here in the chat in just a second. Here, let's do that now. So go back to Zoom. I can't because I'm sharing.
I'll do it for you here.
Stop share. Zoom. Okay, here we go. So here's my email. There we go. And the hashtag is spelled correctly. Collage Street Crew. And those of you who don't know what the crew is, you should definitely look into that, spelled that way. Yeah, we'll be looking through all the images with that hashtag or sent to us in email. And we'll be inviting the best examples for a publication in the beginning of September. So obviously, clearly feel free to continue doing it throughout the year and whatever you like. We'll probably end up discussing it at next year's Collage Fest when we can all actually, give each other hugs and see our faces. Of course, we can't guarantee that every submission will be published, but be sure to document your efforts and show us your best work. Rosie, do you have some more input on that?
Yeah, super excited to see what everybody comes up with. I'm going to be intently following the Collage Street Crew hashtag, and I'm going to post my info down in the chat there as well. So if you have any more questions about wheat pasting or street art or those resources that links that I shared before, you can reach out to me and be happy to chat with anyone.
Yeah, this was a very active chat. I don't even think we really got to every question this time around. So yeah, hit up Rosie, bug her. Sarah also asked, just for a technical question, as far as the images go for your work, 300 DPI and 9 inches high by at least 6 inches wide is what we recommend.
Oh, also, as soon as this is over, I'm going to go to the Collage Fest Survivors, or whatever it is, the Facebook group, and on my Instagram, and post all this information as well. So you're welcome to find it there.
All right. Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Rosie.
Thank you,
this
guys.
was a great session.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. I can't wait to get out there and do some street art myself.
Be safe too, everyone.
Yeah, be safe. We'll keep the chat open for like 5 or 10 minutes, and that's it.
Okay, great.
Right.
Yeah,
Good night,
thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.